Good morning. Happy Sabbath. Linda and I have been gone for 2 weeks, 2 Sabbaths. One of Linda's friends invited us to go on a cruise in the Gulf of Mexico, and they generously even paid our way, so the price was right. But, so I've been out on the ocean. This is the first time for me. Linda says she's been out on the ocean before. But I've been to the coast and looked out at the ocean, but always had land behind me. It's pretty intimidating to get out where it's just water. Ahead of you and behind you and beside you, east and west, and you don't see anything else. Well, I was impressed that at least during the week that we were on the ocean, I never saw it still. It is always moving. I don't know if it's always moving, but it was while we were on it. And it made me think of how appropriate it is when God, in prophecy, he depicts nations rising out of the ocean, or beasts rising out of the ocean, how it's a stirring, it's just constantly moving. And it shows you, it depicts how it is among the world of men. There's just this constant sea of turbulence and trouble and things stirring. The boat we rode on was very tall, and we were at least 10 stories out of the water, so you could see way out. And it's phenomenal. The technology that's in those boats today, even though the water was rough, one day was so rough we could not, they were supposed to dock and let us off on an excursion, and they couldn't bring that ship in safely, and they just let us keep on going. But so today we're going to talk about Jesus being on the Sea of Galilee in a storm. And that verse was read from that story as the disciples had they were with Jesus ministering, and he had been preaching. In Mark chapter 4, it says that he had ceased to just speak plainly, but was only preaching in parables because of the animosity that was beginning to develop toward him. And as the day wore down, Jesus dismissed the crowd, and he asked he had been in the boat, standing up in the boat, preaching to the people along the seashore. And so he dismissed the crowd, and he asked the disciples to take him to the other side. And they headed across the Sea of Galilee. And while they're crossing, a storm arises, and the boat is swamped. And seasoned fishermen are fearful for their lives. It's dark. Sun's gone down. Everything is more scary in the dark. And so the disciple, Jesus is asleep on the back of the boat, on a pillow, it says. how the pillow wasn't soaking wet and why was he asleep, or if he was even asleep. But he was not moving and not disturbed. And the disciples, finally, in desperation, they've done everything they can, and it was a wooden boat. It probably wouldn't have gone to the bottom, but it was completely out of control, and the water was up to the tops of the edges of the boat. And so they wake up Jesus and say, don't you care that we're dying? Help us. And Jesus stands up and he says, peace be still. And the winds and the waves just stop. I can tell you from what I just saw out there on the Gulf of Mexico, nothing just stops. Even if the wind did die, the waves would keep splashing for a while. That day that we were not allowed to come to the dock, the wind was blowing so hard up on the top decks, it was splashing water out of the pools. It's just hang on to your hat. So anyway, Jesus stilled the waves. He stilled the wind and the waves. And the disciples were just stunned. Who is this man? Well, we know who he is, that he created the sea and the winds. The elements of nature obey his voice. So today, though, I'm going to address storms. What storms are you dealing with today? What kind of storms are lurking on your horizon? And can Jesus bring your ship to the shore? Can he calm your storm and my storm? And the answer is yes, he can. And we're going to look at some storms that Jesus calmed in the next few minutes. So, Jesus had said, peace be still, and the Sea of Galilee was smooth as glass, and they brought the boat to shore, only to meet another storm. And this was a storm that was raging inside the soul of a man. There was an unclean spirit that had a hold of this man. He had been chained countless times, and he just ripped the chains apart. The Gospel of Mark, which I'm using today, doesn't mention it, but on the other Gospel says he didn't have any clothes either. And he comes raging out of the cemetery down to the shore and falls at the feet of Jesus. But the words that come out of his mouth are not the words that he wants to say, because the demon controls his voice and his lips. But he got himself something inside of that mind. There was enough humanity still there. It brought him into Jesus' presence, and he fell on the ground before Jesus. When he opens his mouth to speak, the demon takes control. But Jesus understands his thoughts, and he sets this man free. Let's turn to the story a little, and we'll just pick it up. And this is in Mark chapter 5. And if you want to just put a marker in your Bible, if you have a Bible here, we're just going to kind of stick in this area for the whole sermon. It's Mark chapter 5, and we'll pick it up, let's see, verse 7. And he cried with a loud voice and said, and this is what this man who's coming to Jesus, he wants Jesus to release him. But he can't. The demon has taken over. What have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not. And Jesus had said unto him, Come out of the man, thou wicked spirit, thou unclean spirit. And he asked, Jesus that is, asked, What is your name? And the man answered, saying, My name is Legion, for we are many. Well, this is the Spirit speaking here. It's not really the man. And he besought him much that he would not send them away out of the country. Now there was nigh unto the mountains a great herd of swine feeding, pigs. And all the devils besought him, saying, Send us into the swine, that we may enter into them. And forthwith Jesus gave them permission. And the unclean spirits went out and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down the steep place into the sea. They were about 2,000 of them, and were choked in the sea. And they that fed the swine fled, and told it in the city, in the country. And they went out to see what it was that was done. And they came to Jesus, and they see him that was possessed of the devil, and had the legion, sitting and clothed. So he hadn't been clothed before. Now he's got clothes on. And in his right mind. And they were afraid. And they saw it. And they that saw it told them how it befell to him and that was possessed with the devil, and also concerning the swine. And they began to pray Jesus would depart out of their coast, go away. And when he was come into the ship, he that had been possessed with the devil prayed to him that he would be allowed to come with him. But Jesus said to him, Go home to your friends and tell them how great things the Lord has done for thee, and hath had compassion on thee. And he did. The man left. A new man started a new job with a new mind and new clothes. Just save that thought, and we'll revisit this man at the end of the sermon. Storm number 2 has been stilled. So, they're back in the boat, and Jesus says, Go back where we started. So they paddle back across the ocean, or the sea. I don't know if this is a sailboat or a rowboat, but they're going back. And the next morning, they land back on the other side, where they had started. And storm number 3 and 4 come together. Sometimes when in the winter we'll have a storm rolling up from the south, and then something's coming across from the west, and the two storms intersect, and boom, it's a big storm now. That's what happened here. So they get out of the boat, and people start flocking to Jesus, and in the crowd is a man named Jairus. He's a ruler of the synagogue. And he comes to Jesus. He's insistent on getting to Jesus because, and he tells Jesus, my daughter is dying. She's sick. She's at the point of death. Please come and lay your hands on her. I know you can heal her. And Jesus says, yes, I will come. And so they start. But there's this mob, this crowd of people, and they're trying to push their way through. And storm number 4 hits. There's a woman in that crowd who's been sick for 12 years. Been to doctors who've done crazy things to her. And none of it's helped her. She spent a fortune. And she's heard that Jesus is here. But she doesn't want to go into all this stuff that's happened to her. You know, it's been years, it's been going on. It's just been one horrible thing after another. Her life is in the dump. She's out of money, hopeless. If I can just get close enough to touch his clothes. And somehow she gets herself through that mob and touches. And she knows in that instant. I've always wondered how is it, what does it feel like to have Jesus' power surge through your body? And here you get a little hint of it. She knew instantly that it was done, over. I'm clean, I'm cured. And Jesus too knew it. He felt something go out of his body. He stopped, turns around and said, "Who touched me?" And his disciples are like, "What? You're in this mob and we're trying to plow our way through, and who touched me?" And Jesus said, "I know somebody touched me." And he's looking around, and this lady comes forward and tells what has happened to her. And he says, "Your faith has made you whole. Go your way." Storm number 4 is now stilled. Peace be still. But while that is happening, another person comes into the crowd and he lays his hand on Jairus and says, "Don't bother anymore, she's dead." Jairus' storm just went through the roof. He has gone from having hope to now, it's over. I thought it was going to happen. This can't. It's out of our reach now. And Jesus said, "Don't fear. Just trust. Just have faith." And they go. There's some things in this story. I'll mostly see when we pick it up at verse 35, chapter 5, verse 35. And while they yet spake, there came from the rulers of the synagogue's house certain who said, "Thy daughter is dead. Why trouble thou the master any more?" And as soon as Jesus heard the word, that was spoken, he saith unto the ruler of the synagogue, Be not afraid, just believe. And he suffered no man except Peter, James, and John to come. And they came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and they saw this tumult, and them that wept and wailed greatly. There's something about us humans. We like a lot of noise. And when things are going bad, we make a lot of noise, more noise. And so there's a tumult there. And let's see, I'll get back on the page here. Weeping and wailing greatly, big commotion. And when he was come in, he saith unto them, Why make ye this big ado and weep? The damsel is not dead, she's asleep. And now all of a sudden, what was weeping and wailing turns into laughter and mockery. They laughed him to scorn. But when he had put them all outside, he took the father and the mother of the damsel and Peter, James, and John that were with him, and he entered in where the damsel was lying. And he took the damsel by the hand and said to her, Talitha cumi, which in English is, Damsel, I say unto thee, arise. And the little girl got up. Straightway she arose and walked, for she was of the age of 12 years, and they were astonished with a great astonishment. And he charged them straitly that no man should know about it, and commanded that something be given her to eat. Well, I'm sorry, but the news was out. So Jairus' storm was stilled too. Jesus can still calm the storm. Even when they're dead. That's pretty amazing. Storm number 5. From there, Jesus goes back to Nazareth. Do you remember when Philip first was told about Jesus? Somebody said, we found the Messiah, and he's from Nazareth. What was Philip's response to that? Yeah, right. There's something bad about that town. So they went back to Nazareth, and there was so much doubt. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Jesus' work, his ability to calm storms in Nazareth was severely limited because of doubt, and they were offended by him. That's the part that I'm kind of intrigued with. We seem to be living in a time now when everybody's offended about something. And they were offended by Jesus. Well, it's kind of intriguing because you learn something about Jesus' family. Name by name, 4 of Jesus' brothers. We know James. James has a book in the Bible. Let's see. Mark 6, 1-5. And here's what they're saying. Is this not the carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James and Joseph and Judah and Simon? And are not his sisters with us? And they were offended. I'm just curious, what were they offended by? Well, one thing they were offended by was that they were hearing big stories about, he's healed thousands of people and feeding thousands, but he's not doing it here. So there's something about if we don't have confidence in Jesus or in God, He can't work for us. And He was only able to heal a few sick folk that came to Him. And Jesus marveled because of their unbelief. And He went around about the villages teaching. But the storm that was there in Nazareth was one of, I'm offended. Stop being offended. We need to just take Jesus at His word. Jesus says things that stir our feathers. While we were riding on the boat this past week, I think there was a group of 8 of us Seventh-day Adventists that were together, and we kind of hung out together. It was nice to have conversations. And one time, food is endless on these things. Just no end. And it's not just bread and water. They're giving you the best of the best. And so we went for breakfast one day, and we were sitting around the table chatting, and pretty soon they took the breakfast away and lunch was on. We never even left the table. Anyway, visiting was a big part of our time together. What I was going for with that was some of us find some of the things that Jesus says, even Adventists, a little offensive. And we had some discussions that were like, I don't think he should have been so hard on those, on some people, because I was like, what? It's him, it's Jesus. He's got the right to call us out. So, stop being offended and just listen to him. And if you have it even remotely in your power, obey. Don't doubt. And don't be offended. We need this man, Jesus, in charge in our lives, because he needs to calm our storms. We got storms going on in our heads and in our hearts, and for that matter, around us, all around us. Storm number 6. So he leaves Nazareth, and he sends his disciples out to spread the news. Jesus is here, that the Messiah is here. And they eventually, they go out, they have great success, and they come back, but they're telling him the story of the demise of the other great preacher of their time, John the Baptist. And that story is told here in Mark chapter 6. But I want to just look at the man by whom John was executed, Herod. Herod's storm, he probably had multiple storms going on, but one of the worst storms in his life at that point was a woman to whom he was married. Her name was Herodias. She had been his brother's wife, and then somehow there was an affair, and Herod ends up with Herodias. And John the Baptist said, "You don't have any business being married to this woman." Now, what intrigues me is that Herod didn't seem to be offended by this. I think he was kind of taken by, hey, here's a guy that will actually tell me the truth and look me in the eye. I like this guy. But his wife didn't take it so nice. She was offended. And I don't want that man dead. And you're the king, do it. And Herod was not willing to do that, so he just put him in prison, sent some soldiers out, put him in prison to to quell the storm. And apparently worked for a little while, but storms have a way of sneaking up on you. And so Herod's birthday came along. And there's a big party, and there's some drinking. Watch out for the alcohol, folks. That just makes the storm worse. So, a lot of drinking and dancing, and this young girl who was Herodias' daughter, presumably by her first husband. But she was beautiful, and she did a good job with her dance, and because he was drunk, he offered to give her whatever she wanted, even half the kingdom. That was an extravagant offer. But he was kind of trying to show off for his friends. And she, 15 or 16 years old, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. I just won the jackpot. Lottery came in. She doesn't know what to ask for. It could be, she could have been set for life. So she goes and asks her mother, "What do I ask for?" It was a smart idea. She should go to an adult, but not to that one. This adult has a vendetta, and this is her opportunity. She said, "Go back and ask for the head of John the Baptist on a silver plate." I can just imagine that room falling silent when that request came out. But Herod was not able to back away. He could have, but he just couldn't bring himself to do it. And so he ordered soldiers to go to the prison, take John out. They cut his head off and brought it to the party on a plate and handed it to this girl. I just can't even imagine how the party went on after that point. But that was the end of John. Herod had a storm in his life that would not let up. An evil, self-centered woman. But there's kind of a neat thing to this. You would have thought that God would have said, "I'm done with you. You just killed my prophet." Herod had another chance. A short while later, Jesus shows up in his courtroom, or wherever he was, on the day of Jesus' trial. He had a chance. He could have redeemed himself. He wouldn't have redeemed himself. Jesus could have redeemed him. But he sat in the presence of both Jesus and John. Had he chosen to follow and acknowledge Jesus, his storm could have been calmed. Let's see, I'm back up. I missed a part here. On the day of Jesus' crucifixion, he came before Herod. Although Herod refused to condemn Jesus, neither did he have the courage to exonerate him. And he sent him back to Pilate. And the last we hear of Herod is later in the book of Acts. He comes out before a crowd of adoring subjects. Apparently is dressed in impeccable, super fine clothing. And they're, he's a god. And he accepted that adoration. And he died on the platform. And worms ate him on the spot in front of the people. The storm has temporarily died for him, but he is still yet. We know from the spirit of prophecy that Herod and Pilate will see him coming in the clouds of glory. That'll be a stormy day. And the final time you'll see him is at the end of the millennium. Another day. That storm. He had the chance to have the King of the universe still his storm. And he didn't go for it. Storm number 7. The feeding of the 5,000. And Jesus finds himself again on the seashore after this thing with John the Baptist being beheaded. He says to his disciples, let's go across the sea again and get to a place where there's not so many people. Well, they went across, but the people went around and met him on the other side. Big crowd there again. Jesus took compassion on them, and he leads them up on the hillside, a grassy place, and he speaks to them for several hours. Doesn't tell us what he was preaching about. But as the day's wearing on, the disciples are like, this is a massive crowd. And nobody's got anything to eat, and there's nothing here. And so somebody says to Jesus, you need to send them away because, it's getting evening, and they can go into the villages and buy something to eat. Jesus looks at them and says, well, why don't we feed them? And we don't have anything. And they said, well, even if we had $200 worth of bread, it's nothing in this crowd. And, they're probably throwing out the biggest figure they could think of. And so Jesus said, well, what do we have? Oh, well, so somebody ran to the boat and checks the inventory. And they come back and say to Jesus, well, we have 5 loaves and we got 2 little fish. Not big fish, 2 little ones. And he said, well, bring them here, bring it here. And they brought it there, and he said, well, okay, seat the people. And they organized everybody and sat them down in groups of 50s and 100. And that's probably when they figured out how many there really were. And they had 5,000 mature men. So, figuring they at least had 10,000 mouths to feed. And Jesus took it, blessed it, and started handing it out to the disciples, and they spread it out among the people. And everybody ate all they wanted. And then Jesus said, well, let's not waste anything. Take up the leftovers. And they came back with 12 baskets full of fish and bread. It was an incredible story. 12 baskets full. How many mouths do you have to feed? For some, it doesn't happen very often here in this country. We're pretty affluent, but there are a lot of fathers across the globe who are wondering how they're going to feed this family. How do we keep bread on the table? It's truly a test. And Jesus asks, well, what do you have? Just put it in Jesus' hands and see what happens. 5 loaves and 2 fishes. 10,000 people fed and 12 baskets left over. It's just amazing. Notice, it was simple nutrition. There was some protein and some carbohydrates. It wasn't cake and ice cream. But he fed them. And then Jesus put the disciples back in the boat and sent them away. We know from other sources that the disciples are watching this go on, and they're thinking, man, we got to crown him now. The crowd is here. Everybody's super impressed. What could a king do with this kind of power? You could march armies across the planet and feed them on nothing. This is our conquering king. We need to put the crown on his head right now and make him king. And Jesus knew that was going on in their hearts, and he put them in the boat and said, go out to sea, and I'll take care of the people. And he dismissed the crowd. Everybody went home with a full tummy and some leftovers for the trip home. And Jesus went up onto the mountain to pray. And the disciples are rowing out across, just unhappy. They feel like Jesus thwarted them in their efforts, and they were probably unhappy with themselves, maybe a little unhappy with Jesus. And another storm comes on the sea. And they're rowing hard, and the wind is against them. And they're not making headway, and it's just exhausting. And Jesus sees them out there struggling. And he comes down off the mountain, and it's starting to get dark, and he walks out to meet them on the water. By 10 o'clock, he walks up alongside the ship. He pretends he's going to walk right by. And the disciples see this in the midst of everything. It doesn't tell us that the boat was filling up, but they were having a struggle. And they were exhausted, and they were tired, and they were just grumpy. And now they see what appears to be a ghost walking on the water, probably coming for them. And they start to scream. These are grown men, big, tough guys, but they're not feeling tough now. And they are concerned. And Jesus said, don't worry, it's just me. And then he just walks over and gets in the boat. Now, another gospel, this gospel doesn't tell us this, but in one of the other gospels, this is when Peter got out of the boat and walked out to see him. And I kind of don't like, I think we're a little unfair with Peter. Some preachers will tell you that, well, you know, he was bragging and looking back to see if everybody was watching. It was a stormy sea. It hadn't calmed yet until Jesus got into the boat. So Peter steps out there on the water. I'm sure that took a little skill to balance. And at first, he's focused on Jesus. I got to see what he's doing. And then he turned his focus on what's going on around me, and I believe that fear took hold. And he's going down. And he screams, "Save me!" And Jesus reaches out, pulls him out. And they walk back to the boat together. And the storm is calmed. And peace comes back into the group. What a wonderful picture. But now we're starting to come full circle. So they're back on the ocean. The storm's been calmed again, and they head for shore. And where do they land? Back where the demon guy was. And this time, they know him. When he comes out of the boat, hey, it's the guy, it's the man that cast the demon out of our friend. And they scatter and they run to their villages and towns all over the area. And people flock out to Jesus. And they bring their sick and line them up on the roads. Somebody apparently told them that if you even touch his clothes, you're going to be healed. And they were trying to touch his clothes. What a great story. What a great thing. Jesus. And it's all because one guy went through their towns and their villages and told them what Jesus had done for him. They lined him up on the sides of the roads so that they might just touch his garments. These are the same people who just a year or less before had begged him to leave because all their bacon was gone. And all this because of just one man joyfully sharing his story with everyone who would listen. I ask you, friends, what has Jesus done for you? Has he calmed your storm? Have you been about to drown in trouble? Maybe some trouble of your own making. Did Jesus say, "Peace be still" for you? Or maybe you're still in the storm. Just reach out to him like Peter when he's fallen into the water. Call on him. Call his name. He knows what's dragging you down, and he can lift you up. You're not alone. Even if your words seem awkward and strange, approach him. Remember the demon-possessed man. His words were completely blocked by the demonic statements that came out of his mouth. Yet Jesus understood what he wanted and needed. Or are you like Jairus? Someone you love is dying before your very eyes. Jesus can lift them, even from the cold jaws of death. Do not be afraid, just trust. Or are you like the lady with the issue of blood? Some chronic illness has just kept you from living your life to the full. Just touch his garments by faith. See what he can do for you. Are you struggling to keep the people under your care fed and clothed and housed? Does it seem impossible? Maybe it is impossible. I know some of you're young, and I've been there. In my early years, in my 20s, I was at the end of the money every month. There was no money going in the bank. But it's not impossible for Jesus. You give him those 5 pieces of bread and 2 small fishes and just see what he can do. He'll not let you down. You have no idea of the things that you can do if you place your trust in him. Once you experience Jesus and start to feel his peace in your soul, start sharing it. Tell everyone who will listen what great things that he has done for you. And when he returns, and he most certainly will return, just like he did there in this last village. When he returns, and he most certainly will, you will recognize him and he will recognize you. And like the once demon-possessed man, you can bring your family and your friends to Jesus, and he will heal them too. There's not one of us who doesn't need the touch of Jesus to calm our storms. Peace, be still.
Our closing hymn, number 530, It Is Well With My Soul. Shall we stand? When
Father in heaven, we thank you so much for sending us the Prince of Peace. May our hearts be filled with the calm that only comes from your presence within. And may we share that calm, share that peace with those around us, and bring them to you. In Jesus' name we thank you and praise you.